Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I am going to be doing my top 5 retellings. Firstly, it means I get to start with one of my favourite books, which is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. Now, I'm going to put this down because once again it's making my face as white as anything, and I don't need that because I'm as pale as what am I as pale as? I'm just white. I could practically be paper. A few years ago I saw the Hours film. I was completely immersed in this world. But between my first and second watching, for some reason I was at the hospital and they have like a second-hand bookstore thing, and I don't know how many times this book had been read before, but the spine is like... the spine is beggared, basically. And so I found The Hours by Michael Cunningham is a retelling of Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, in that it casts Virginia Woolf as a character. It casts a new Mrs. Dalloway, a young woman in the 1940s, takes the themes and it takes the ideas from Mrs. Dalloway and modernises them, as Mrs. Dalloway highlights all these really heartbreaking after effects of war and terrible thoughts of the time. The Hours does for the late 90s. I read The Hours earlier this year and then I'd given away my copy of Mrs. Dalloway, but reading The Hours really, it instilled in me this want to read Mrs. Dalloway, and I went back and read this text, and I said in a previous video, this book completely highlighted the horror and the heartbreak in Mrs. Dalloway for me, and vice versa. The next book I chose was a book that I only read recently, and it was The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I recently mentioned this in my November wrap-up. It takes the fairy tales of old and recast the characters in a more adult way. They hadn't been watered down for children, and these stories are incredibly adult. They are funny and they are dark and at times twisted, and I think it's a brilliant collection, and this is a brilliant cover. So that's all I'm going to say about that, and I'll link my video below where you can see me talk about it some more and how these are really stories to unpick. And I didn't understand all the references, and I'm going to go back, I'm going to reread it, I'm going to try and figure out all the references, and it's going to be brilliant and I'm going to really enjoy myself. It's Snake Robes by Jess Richards. This book follows a woman called Mary whose younger brother has gone missing and she has to find him. And she's living on this isolated island, it doesn't specify where, and these tall men come and they steal her brother, and children are going missing all the time. Throughout there are a lot of ominous supernatural things, there's a lot of magical realism, it subverts myths. And I can definitely see that there are things going on with the Selkie story that's in here, and there's a lot of Celtic lore and mythology that is taken and it's used in a way that really fits the story, and the story is incredibly evocative. We have a book that I am planning on rereading this month, and that is The Snow Child by Owen Ivy. The story behind this book is that the author used to work in a bookstore and she saw The Snow Child so many times. Owen Ivy discovered a picture book of the Snow Maiden, and then she found all these other retellings, including Arthur Ramson's, which is included in this edition, and decided that she would go out and she would write her own story. But the story is a brilliant... As with all magical realism stories, the place is very prominent, and here the place and the setting is a vital theme. It emphasises the isolation and the depression of these two characters, and it's set in 1920s Alaska, and there are quite a few interviews online, so you can go and look and find out more about this book. And then finally, it was going to get mentioned, it'll probably get mentioned on 50,000 people's channels, and it's Cinder by Marissa Meyer. It's the entire Lunar Chronicles. I've talked about them a few times now on this channel. I really enjoy them. I think that they are fast-paced, I think they're brilliant YA. I do think there are a few issues. Rewrite traditional fairy tales in sci-fi settings. As we all know, I did not care for the fourth one as much as I did the third. The third, Cress, will always be my favourite of the series, and one that I could reread without having to read any of the other books, because at the moment, one that I care about most of all. And that was an incredibly fast video. I probably should have had more to say. I probably should have done, but you only asked me for a top 5. In fact, nobody asked me. I decided that I was going to do it because I really couldn't think of videos for Wednesdays. Anyway, until next time, that is all.